there was a period of time, I think, when we started New Yankee Workshop, you look back at craft books that were available for people, you know, after the war and into the 60s, and you looked at the furniture that was being offered to people in magazines and so forth, and it was not very good. It was just not very well designed, and the proportions weren't right. And that's why I like going to the past. I mean, to me, the anonymous craftsman is the ultimate inspiration. You know, and I encourage that, because people who, I think when you're doing woodworking and you even look at antiques, you should allow yourself the freedom to make slight changes and adapt it to what you can. As you said, you know, if you can't turn it, what else can you do? Mm-hmm. It's all about doing woodworking.
And what struck your eye with this?
I think again, this was one of those cases where it wasn't so much about this particular piece. It was the whole concept of a corner cupboard. Mm-hmm. We did make a distinction saying, you know, this one is obviously built in. It was not a freestanding piece of furniture. I think at the time when we were researching it, we didn't find corner cupboards that were freestanding pieces of furniture, and most of them are not. I mean, a lot of them are very much built into the structure of the house. So it just became a concept of a piece that you can display things in or store things in. And if it's something you want to take with you, you have to build it as a freestanding piece of furniture. So I think that was the vent we were on. You know, we were saying, okay, these work great. They have a purpose. They can add a nice touch to a room, but we're going to build ours as a freestanding piece of furniture rather than a permanently built-in piece. And it gave us a chance to, you know, again, this was very early in the beginning of New Yankee Workshop, so this gave us a chance to just look at, you know, a raised panel door and see the hand plane marks on the back and see the mortise and tenon joinery. And it was sort of very much of an introduction. These were very early shows, so we were introducing people to traditional craft. Yet when we got back to the workshop, I built a large portion of that corner cupboard out of materials that hadn't even been thought of yet. You know, MDO plywood, and we did use pine. You know, it's native pine. Yeah. Again, you know, the first attraction for most of the pieces that we've done in the shop is proportions, function. And from a woodworking perspective, you know, what's different about this and other projects that I've done in the show, and the splayed legs, and the fact that it's elliptical. The top is slightly elliptical. You know, how do you lay out? How do you cut an ellipse? So that was part of the exercise, and the support. You know, the shape, and there's no mechanical fasteners. There's not a single, except for the hinges, there's not a single piece of metal. I mean, this is all wood, so it's like there's a dowel there that you form on the end of the piece, and it's been well used, and it was actually, you know, fairly well taken care of. Often you see these tables, somebody's been hacking away with a knife, cutting up the vegetables for dinner, you know. I love looking at the tops of these tables, trying to figure out what happened. But you also see the wear. I mean, we don't try to, I think it's hard to, I don't like furniture that's deliberately distressed necessarily. Right. You cannot, I've done a couple pieces like that, but you know, this wear, you know, somebody's had their foot on there, you know, they were sitting at this table, you can see it on that side. Let it happen in your own house. You know, don't try to fake it.
Sure.
I've done it a lot of different ways over the years. You know, sometimes I'll ask if I can take very careful measurements, or as we mentioned earlier, get the measurements from the museum. Private collections, it's a lot easier to actually trace patterns or whatever. What I've done recently is two things. Sometimes I'll do it with my cameraman. We'll shoot video and just hold a tape there, and if he shoots it close enough, I can actually translate that information. Or I will take a digital picture of that leg, measure the height, measure the width of the square portion, and basically just take that image and by scale. On the computer, I can zoom in on it. I can get it to be the exact size that it is, and then I can just take rough measurements. And you know, again, I'm not trying to reproduce it to the 32nd of an inch. Right. It's the proportions that I'm looking for. So, digital pictures, and you know, using the computer to manipulate that picture to get what you're looking for. That's how I do it now.
Okay.
The digital camera has become a really good tool when you're trying to document information to build a piece of furniture. This project was somewhat a response to viewers. I mean, we have people who write into the website constantly asking for projects, asking us to build projects. I constantly get letters with plans and photographs of pieces of furniture people have that they say, we think this would be fun, could you build it on the workshop? We haven't done a lot of that, but we have somewhat responded to people writing in and saying, when are you going to do a cradle? And I think that drove part of the decision to come and try to find one. And this one was unique enough that we decided that we would do it. Having the hood was a unique feature. You know, it's faux painted. It's a very simple form. And the rockers, so I did a couple things differently. These rockers, we noted, were nailed in through the bottom, and we've already talked about, you know, the problems of that. So what I did when I built mine is I modified it and I made a sliding dovetail so that the rocker is just attached with one fastener in the middle and it's free to move within that joint. This one is just, you know, it's a rabbeted joint. And it's just, you know, nailed together. To give people more woodworking technique, this one I did with finger joints.
Right.
And so, you know, sometimes we'll look at a piece like this and say, well, this is so simple. The construction is so simple. How can we teach something at the same time, give the viewer something they might want to build, and bring into that technique, because it's always about technique. So therefore, you know, let's fix the rocker problem, because that'll be a problem. Let's build it out of a fancier wood. We built it out of cherry. Let's do finger joints, and you know, and then we did the hood. And this was one of the ones. Again, you know, you sort of took the cue from the audience and then gave them what they want. A lot of times they'll propose projects that we just say, oh, no, we're not going to build that one. You know, a lot of requests for gun cases. And believe it or not, in recent years, people said, well, why don't you build a casket? And I said, that's a little too preemptive, I think. You know? What are you doing? Oh, just getting ready. The attraction of this project was that it was something we had never done before. And the bow front was interesting to me in the sense is how you execute that. I also found this piece kind of interesting because, to me, it had almost a modern feel to it, because if you look at the legs and the feet and how they just kind of flare out and the whole thing kind of flows down. I said, I wonder how they did that. And I knew that when I built it that I would use techniques different than the original creator. A lot of this is veneer, and the one I built is veneer to some extent, but it's a laminated bow front to the draw front, and I thought I could get some technique out of that for the viewers.
Right.
We also knew that, you know, with the inlay work, that we were not going to try to do that. That's beyond what most of our viewers will do. It's not something that you know, I've done very little of it. I would love to do more of it, but we knew that if we tried to do that, it would be difficult. The only inlay piece was the band around the bottom here. I did do that. But other than the marquetry, we stayed pretty true to the dimensions. And I think the attraction again was, how do you make a bow front, draw front? How do you do these legs? And you know, I took some pictures and saw how it was built originally, and I got some pretty unique photographs with a digital camera. You just stick it underneath and take a snapshot of it. I think I took a very simple pattern we took a drawer and put it on a piece of paper and just got the arc. That's all I wanted to know, is how you get that arc. And then I take all that information back to the workshop and start to work it out, basically. Yeah. So, you know, and we talked about this in the segment, how this was a veneer laminated, that this was a solid piece of wood, unlike what I was going to do, which was several laminations. And because it is wood, and you will get some movement this way, I'm not too worried about that. I think, wood, it's going to do its thing. You can't fight it. A lamination should be more stable, technically.
Right.
But when you bend it and vacuum bag it and you take it out, you got to pull it a little bit more because it's going to come back somewhat. And you just kind of hope that you're going to get the angles right. What I actually did in the end, I think, is when I built the prototype, I built my first draw front, and then I used that to give me the shape of the top, as well as the intermediate rails that go across. So this is certainly a upper level woodworking project. This is not for the beginner.
Right.
It's almost not even for the intermediate, but it is for the upper intermediate who wants to try to make another step forward. And it's great to look at old pieces of furniture because a lot of them, they feel just right. I mean, it's very elegant, the shape is right. As far as the joinery techniques go, when you think about it, a lot of these antique pieces, mortise and tenon joinery, dovetail joinery, that's been around forever. And it turns out that it's still probably the best way to build a piece of furniture. So what I can do, if people look at some of the projects that I've built, or even have some of the plans, they can see that I use a lot of those techniques still today.